Hello everyone, Namaste. So we have already have our guest speaker today here. We already have Mark. Mark, you're welcome. Namaste. Swagat cha yahanलाई. Okay. In next session, we are with Mark Tabler, US-Nepal bilateral relationship. So we'll focus on US-Nepal bilateral relationship. So in this session, we'll talk about how can Nepal benefit from the choice of development partners and what are the current threats. The focus remains to discover about ways of Nepal's search for prosperity through transit diplomacy, international cooperative agencies. So we'll focus on this. For this, we have Mark Tabler here. So I want to introduce Mark with bio. Mark Templer is the acting political and economic counselor for the US Embassy in Nepal. He has also done assignments in Washington, supporting the peace process in Afghanistan and US policies in Nepal and South Asia, as well as previously working in Dubai, Pakistan, and India. Prior to joining the US government, Mark served as the founder and CEO of Hope Worldwide South Asia for over 20 years, focusing on grassroots community development programs, including extensive work in India and programs initiated in Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Nepal, Pakistan, and Sri Lanka in mid-1980s. Mark completed a bachelor's in physics and master's in political science at MIT and master's of science in economics from London School of Economics. Mark and Nadini, his wife of 33 years, have 5 children, 4 of whom were born in India, including 2 adopted daughters. Okay, with this, I want to welcome Mike. Mike, you are welcome to the session. Namaste.
Namaste. Should I start?
Okay, yes, please. Over to you, Mark.
Okay, good afternoon and namaste. I want to say to all of you, it's an honor to be invited to this program, which is training you in leadership skills that will hopefully serve you well for the rest of your life. And we know that some of you will end up as advisors to MPs in the Gandaki Province Parliament, which is a great opportunity for public service. I know you've already heard from Ambassador Berry and parliamentarians. Thank you to Pokhara Research Center, especially Mr. Sujan Regmi, Executive Director, and to all of you for welcoming me today. I'll try to move pretty quickly through my prepared remarks so we can have more time for conversation. Tara, shuru garnu agi, ma alikati Nepal ko barema charcha garna chanchu. Ma pahilo patak san 1993 Kathmandu Patyakama aeko thiye. Hami yaha एउटा गैर सरकारी संस्था स्थापित गर्यो. त्यसपछि म धेरै पटक नेपालमा आउँथे. 1993 देखि आजसम्म त्यो संस्थाले एउटा आशा विद्यालय काठमाडौँमा बालाजु क्षेत्रमा सञ्चालन गरेको छ र विराटनगर र चाइमाले गाउँमा पनि युवाहरूलाई प्रशिक्षण गर्दैछ. तर 11 सालदेखि मैले अमेरिकाको सरकारको लागि कूटनीतिज्ञको काम गरेको छु. व्यक्तिगत रूपले म तपाईहरूले अलिअलि सल्लाह दिन चाहन्छु. अहिले तपाईं युवाहरू हुनुहुन्छ. तपाईको भविष्यको लागि धेरै अवसर आउनेछन्. तपाईहरूको दिलमा धेरै सपनाहरू छन्. प्यारको सपना, सेवाको सपना, सफलताको सपना. तपाईहरूले म गरिब मान्छेहरूको सेवा गर्न चाहन्छु भनेर भन्न सक्नुहुन्छ. म आफ्नो देशको सेवा गर्न चाहन्छु. म एक व्यापार सुरु गर्न चाहन्छु. भविष्यको सपनाहरू धेरै छन्. हामीले एउटा लोकप्रिय हिन्दी गीतबाट सायद सिक्न सक्छौं होला. हर घड़ी बदल रही है रूप जिंदगी, छाव है कभी कभी है धूप जिंदगी, हर पल यहाँ जी भर जियो, जो है समा कल हो न हो. हामीलाई भन्नु हुँदैन कि मात्रै भविष्यमा म केही गर्नेछु जब म उच्च स्तरीय पदमा आइपुग्नेछु. आज तपाईं राम्रो कार्य गर्न सक्नुहुन्छ। यदि परिस्थिति खराब छ भने त्यसो भए पनि जीवन जोडले जिनुपर्छ। जस्तो कल हो न हो को गीतमा गाएको थियो, हामीलाई हर क्षण हर अवसर पूरा हृदयले लिनुपर्छ। Okay, so अलिकति नेपाली भाषामा मैले भने, तर अहिले म अलिकति अङ्ग्रेजी भाषामा पनि व्याख्या गर्न चाहन्छु। Okay, so back to English, which I'm more comfortable with. But today, what I'm going to do to start out is to discuss the relationship between the United States and Nepal, and then I'll discuss our strategy in Asia and our foreign policy goals. And I hope we have time for questions and answers, and I'm eager to hear from you and learn from you. Well, as a starting point, it's worthwhile to think about, why does a country have a foreign policy? Why do all of our governments have embassies, diplomats, national security advisors, foreign policy committees? The object of any foreign policy is to make the most out of the opportunities that exist outside of a country and to do everything to mitigate the threats that emerge from outside the country. At its core, a country's foreign policy is driven, or should be, by a country's national interests, what a country wants and needs. With that framework in mind, let's look at the relationship between the United States and Nepal. If we think about Nepal's interests, what does Nepal get from the United States in terms of minimizing threats and maximizing opportunities? I genuinely believe the United States poses no threat to Nepal. Yes, we're a big country and we have global interests, but we're not on any of Nepal's borders. We're located far from the region, and we have no history of interfering in Nepal's internal affairs. Now, as we do in all countries, we draft reports about human rights situation here. We write op-eds about topics like democracy and corruption, and we speak out on all kinds of topics from press freedom to minority rights. Now, these things might annoy some people, but we believe they contribute to the success of Nepal and of other countries by enriching the discussion and public debate on important topics. And certainly these actions do not pose a threat to Nepal. On the other hand, the United States presents a significant opportunity for Nepal. For the over 70 years of our relationship, the United States has made substantial contributions to Nepal's development, including by helping Nepal eradicate malaria in the Terai region, which saved lives and opened up new agricultural production, by sending Peace Corps volunteers to help Nepal build the knowledge and language skills of its citizens, including many of your leaders, such as the current Prime Minister, and by grants of equipment and training so Nepal's security forces can defend the country. To this day, the United States is Nepal's largest bilateral donor. The UK also gives a lot to Nepal. Every year, US taxpayers send about $200 million to Nepal in the form of development assistance. This money helps Nepal to build schools, to train teachers. It provides nutrition to Nepal's most vulnerable citizens. And I've seen with my own eyes in my NGO work what it looks like to be poor and what it feels like to be poor in Nepal and also in other countries in the region. This assistance raises the incomes of Nepal's poor and supports your security forces to build capacity and capability. And during the COVID crisis, the United States has been doing a lot to help Nepal in so many different ways, giving more than $11 million. We've conducted widespread public awareness messaging to help 14 million people know about COVID. We provided 15 crore Nepali rupees to locally purchase COVID testing supplies, PPE, telemedicine kits, mobile hand washing stations, and other things to support the population. We installed water and sanitation infrastructure in 130 health facilities and provided training and control equipment to 147. We helped the country increase its number of labs doing COVID tests from just 1 in March to 47 in September. And we've given technical assistance to 389 municipal governments on preventing COVID and dealing with controlling it. And also, in addition to that, the American people have given $500 million for the Millennium Challenge Compact, which is otherwise known as MCC, which is going to help Nepal build power lines and improve maintenance of its roads. The United States has opened its markets to Nepali products and helped Nepali companies better access international markets. Your government is worried about Nepal's foreign trade deficit, which slowed down the country's development. And we've got to think about this. Why does Nepal have a foreign trade deficit, i.e. it imports more than it exports? Where is it getting all this stuff from? You know, think about it right now. Guess in your mind, which country is the #1 exporter of stuff to Nepal? That's probably pretty obvious. The same country that makes all the great Bollywood movies, it's India. Well, guess what's #2? Again, not surprising, Nepal's other big neighbor, China, followed by the UAE, Indonesia, and Thailand. These are the countries that export stuff to Nepal. Now, on the other side of the trade deficit is exports. Who buys the stuff that Nepal makes? Well, the biggest buyer of Nepal's products is India. And guess who's #2? It's the United States, followed by Germany. And this is a bit surprising to me because the United States is on the other side of the world. We don't have a border, and yet we buy more of the goods that Nepal produces than any other country except India, one of its 2 neighbors. And in fact, we buy in the United States 4 times more of Nepal's products than your other neighbor, China. In other ways, the United States provides opportunities to the people of Nepal. Nepal is the 49th largest country in the world by population, but there's more than 13,000 Nepali citizens studying at US colleges and universities. And this is the 11th highest among countries sending students to the US. Over 1,500 Nepali citizens are working in the United States in professional positions on H-1B visas. This makes Nepal among the largest recipients of these work visas in the world. And tens of thousands of Nepali citizens who become legal permanent residents and American citizens continue to contribute to Nepal's development from abroad. And well over 80,000 American tourists have visited Nepal in 2019, which is a 20% increase in 2 years. I really hope that when COVID ends, we'll see many tourists come back. Now, that's a quick snapshot of what Nepal gets from its relationship with the United States. What's the other side? What does the United States get from its relationship with Nepal? Well, I told you about the billions of dollars that the United States has sent to Nepal over the years. Well, why would we do that? Well, as I said at the beginning of the remarks today, every country's foreign policy is driven by its interests, and this is also true of the United States. What makes the United States different is the way we perceive our interests, including in Nepal. Our internal strategy for Nepal, the document we in the embassy use to guide our work, it identifies our primary interest in Nepal as helping Nepal become more stable, more secure, more prosperous, and more independent. We think it's in our interest to see Nepal be strong, and our assistance is dedicated to that end. Yes, we'd like to see Nepal buy more American products. We'd like to see Nepal vote with us more at the UN. But fundamentally, the US's self-interest is best served by Nepal that's able to defend itself and strengthen its sovereignty and provide greater security and prosperity to its people. And this concept is called enlightened self-interest. And this is at the core of our approach everywhere in the world. It's part of our vision for Asia, from Nepal and its neighbors to the islands of the South Pacific. When we talk about our US vision for Asia, we're talking about ensuring that the region remains free and open in the future. Free. Free refers both to the international system and the reality within each country. We want the nations of Asia to be free from outside coercion. We want the sovereign choices of Nepal to be respected, for all countries to be free to choose the paths they choose without being forced onto another path simply because they're less powerful. We have seen that coercion can take many forms. Hard coercion of military might, and soft coercion of predatory lending for big infrastructure projects that might look good in the newspapers, but they erode a country's sovereignty by saddling its citizens with unsustainable debts or requiring the mortgaging of property in ports. That's why all of our assistance, all the hundreds of millions of dollars I was talking about earlier, it comes in the forms of grants, not loans. And the other thing when we talk about being free, we mean at the societal level, we want the people of Asia to become more and more free. Free in terms of improved governance, in terms of protection of fundamental human rights, in terms of transparency and anti-corruption. So this is part of our vision for Asia. The second thing besides being free is that it's open. We mean what? Open access to sea lanes, open access to airways. This is so trade can occur. As a landlocked country, Nepal has every interest in ensuring that the region remains open. We also mean by open that we want more open regional infrastructure, more regional a more open regional integration. There's an infrastructure gap throughout Asia. We want to help the region to plan and build infrastructure that drives integration and raises the GDPs of each country's economy, and not getting them bogged down in crazy debt costs. In this context, we emphasize the importance of transparency. The United States respects Nepal's sovereignty and obeys Nepal's laws. We work in the open, and we're not looking for shortcuts in the procurement process or for backroom deals or bribes. If you want to know what the United States is doing in Nepal, where our money goes, you can find detailed information in the public domain, including on our website, public reports submitted to Congress. If you consider even the MCC, all of the details are available to Nepali citizens online. We believe that the government of Nepal and all Nepali citizens should have access to this information. And we believe infrastructure development works best when all countries are transparent. Now, by open, we also mean more open regulatory structures that attract investment. For years, the United States has supported more open investment environments based on transparent regulatory structures, so countries like Nepal can attract a greater share of direct foreign investment from investors in the United States and elsewhere. Transparent regulatory structures ensure that Nepali innovators, investors, and entrepreneurs can benefit from an investment environment that will drive economic growth. And the last thing we mean by open is open trade. Free, fair, and reciprocal trade is something the United States has supported for decades. As I said before, Nepal already runs a trade surplus in the United States. It's benefiting from this decades-old US commitment, which continues today as part of our strategy in Asia. We're not asking Nepal to be for the United States, and we're also not asking Nepal to be against any other country. We're asking for Nepal to be for the principles that have already helped Nepal and the Asia region prosper, and be vigilant and outspoken against anyone who violates these principles and norms. We ask Nepal to stand up for the principle that big countries cannot invade small countries. We ask Nepal to stand up for the principle that strong countries cannot seize territory from smaller countries and claim it at gunpoint as their own. We ask Nepal to stand up for the principle that countries should interact on the basis of law, not on the basis of might makes right. We ask Nepal to stand up for the rule of law and for transparency, and including that Nepal demand all foreign investors and donors follow Nepal's laws and commit to transparency about what they're doing in Nepal, including the United States. We ask Nepal to stand up for the principle that countries who threaten their neighbors and international peace with nuclear weapons and missiles, as North Korea has done, shouldn't be tolerated. We ask Nepal to abide by UN Security Council resolutions that prevent North Korea from using its enemies to earn money to pay for its destabilizing behavior. We especially note that many of the North Korea's money-making activities involve criminal conduct, including smuggling ivory, cyber crimes, and they stole $85 million from Bangladesh's national bank. In my mind, everything about the US vision for Asia is completely in line with Nepal's own strategic interests. As a small country, dependent on free trade and open lines of communication, Nepal has every interest in strengthening this system and standing up against those who seek to undermine it. How else can Nepal safeguard its sovereignty and secure its future? Some people have argued that our vision for the region is anti-China. I'd like to talk about this for a moment directly. Let me be clear. The United States welcomes Chinese investment that supports Nepal's priorities and future development. We welcome Chinese investment in the United States, and it makes sense too that Nepal is eager to seek more investment, more trade, more engagement with such a large and important neighboring country. No country is excluded from our vision of a free and open Asia. Our vision for this region isn't anti-China. A free and open global system is exactly what helped China rise and succeed so well. And we believe a free and open Asia will be as important to China's future as it is the future of Nepal, India, and every other country in the region. I'm very eager to hear your views, but as I look at the threats and opportunities that confront Nepal, I think Nepal has as much to gain as any other country from ensuring a free and open Asia. One last thought before I close and invite your questions. You have an important role to play, whether or not you become an advisor to the Gandaki Parliament. You today, not just when you in the future reach a high position, as I talked about at the start in Nepali, you today can contribute to a more strong and prosperous Nepal that is connected to the world and not controlled by any other country, and that benefits from free trade and good ties with others. I appeal to you personally, please maintain your own integrity. Stand against corruption, not just now, but when you're older as well. Oppose violence for political reasons and violence against women and children. Treat others with respect, even if you're trying to accomplish something. Speak out for human rights. Stand up for the poor, not just with words, but by your deeds. Be willing to learn. And listen to both sides of the story, and not just the first person or source you hear. As you continue your studies and you move on to future positions of leadership, I hope you think critically about Nepal's relationships with the United States and with all of your partners, and to consider what courses of action are most beneficial to Nepal's interests and values. I look forward to your questions, and I'm very grateful for this chance to be with you today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Everyone is very loving your Nepali as well. Thank you for that Nepali note. So we'll try to make it both languages, Nepali and English, so that will be easy. So while reading your bio, I find one very interesting thing, which is very common with you and me, and I would like to share at the start. I also did my bachelor's degree in physics, and I shifted to economics for my master's. And while I was studying your bio, I find the same, so sort of special connections. So today we are trying to take a lot of questions from our different participants. So we'll try to look at the questions, and we'll try to get a lot of answers from your side. Okay, Nepal and United States of America established the diplomatic relations between them on 25th April 1947. The US is the second country, only after UK, which Nepal established diplomatic relationships. So we have a pretty long history of relationship. So here's one question from our participant Milan Guru. To what extent is the bilateral economic relation with the United States added to the contribution of economic growth of Nepal, as our export goods seems to be low value added comparing with what we imports from the United States?
Okay, now that's a great question. And so, you know, one of the ways that a country like Nepal will grow and move towards prosperity is by moving from low value added products to higher value added. Now, as I noted, the US does import from Nepal a lot more than it exports to Nepal, but I think the question is valid in that you're asking about the kind of things that are being exported. And this is where I think our assistance, especially the economic assistance that we provide through USAID, we're very interested in training entrepreneurs and helping Nepal develop its IT sector, to helping Nepal develop higher value added products in agriculture and other things, to help Nepal with education, because education helps people to create value added businesses. We're part of the international multilateral organizations like the IMF and World Bank, and we're the largest donor to them. The IMF, for example, gave $200 and something million of rapid credit facility to help Nepal fight COVID, and we're the biggest donor to that. We support the IMF when they're trying to help Nepal's government to, you know, maintain its revenues in the face of COVID. So the point I'm trying to make here is that you are correct that the value added of US products sold to Nepal, though much smaller than what you sell to us, is significantly higher, but we hope that your path to prosperity will include more and more high value added. And you all, if you push for a Nepal that is free and transparent, can attract the kind of investments that help create greater value added economic growth. Because having capital from all over the world will help you to be competitive. And I saw this myself when I worked in India as an NGO person. As India opened itself up, I was there in 1991, and Manmohan Singh opened up the country more to the world. Indians are awesome. Indians are smart. Nepalis are awesome. Nepalis are smart. You put Nepalis competing with the rest of the world, they'll do awesome. But if you're closed off and not connected, you won't do awesome. So to the extent that you can open your country up and have transparent ways of working, you're going to do great. And I was always confident that the same would occur in India. And I watched India develop because Indians are great, but Nepalis are great. There's no difference. You guys know how to study. You have resilience. You have character, courage. There's every reason why Nepal can succeed tremendously. And so that's a great question, though. Thank you. And the name was, I'm not sure I'm good at pronouncing it. Milan Gurung. Okay, thank you, Milan.
Okay. I'll go to the next question by Bhavana Bandari. She's asking, what measures can be taken to maintain healthy relationship between countries with different political ideologies?
Okay, and say the name again. It was Bhavna Bandhari.
It was Bhavana Bandari, yes.
So Rashtrapati ko naam, tara tapai ko naam, Bhavna cha, tara tapai ko desh ko Rashtrapati ko naam Vidya Bandhari cha. So the question is, how do you have good relations with countries with different ideologies? Well, you know, real good relations, this is a great question as well. Real good relations are built on mutual interests. So, you know, the United States does not have a Maoist or communist government running it. And in the past, the United States resisted the expansionist communism of the Soviet Union when we were concerned that they were out to dominate the world. But communism in itself is no problem for the United States. What we care about is good relations. And whoever's in the government, whichever party, we're happy to have close relations with countries. And we've established this even with countries that once were where we were engaged in wars, like Vietnam. We have very warm and positive relationships. We have great relationships with countries that have very different systems from ours. And even in Europe, the countries are much more towards the socialist side. We have excellent relations. Why? Because we're looking for mutual self-interest. And I think another part of that, Bhavna, is mutual respect is really key to good relations. We know that people in other countries are just as good as people in the United States. We're not any better than anybody else. And so if we treat people with respect, then, you know, like in India, I remember I used to see on the auto rickshaws, Adar Malena, Adar Dena. Okay, so Adar Dinu, Adar Linu. You give respect, you take respect. So I think that principle is much more important than the political philosophy of any particular party in power. Now, I think it is more difficult to have relationships with totalitarian states that oppress its people. So but that's not at all Nepal. Nepal is a democracy. Nepal has freedom. But when a country is run by a dictatorship, it's harder for us in a democracy to be close to them because of their oppressive approach. But even then, we try to have relationships that advance our mutual interests.
Okay, thank you. I'll join to MCC, okay? Millennium Challenge Corporation. CEO of Millennium Challenge Corporation, MCC, Dana had visited Nepal in February 2015 and briefed about the MCC's decision and potentiality of sectors in which the aid can be utilized to ministers and high-level dignitaries. So in Nepal, there is not much change in political dignitaries and high-level officials till date 2020. We do not have significant change in any of these political dignitaries and high officials. But still, MCC is very much making some of the debatable issue in Nepal. So how do you view this point as MCC as a very debatable thing currently in Nepal in current political leadership?
Okay, well, you know, I won't comment directly on the internal political debate over MCC in Nepal, but I can make a couple of comments about MCC, just criticisms that we've seen in the media, and even I see Reazon Dungana has written something about MCC concerned about the immunity clause in section 6.8 that provides for immunity for MCC staff in all courts and tribunals. So that's a good question. So let me address the Reazon Dungana's question, and I'll also address some other points about MCC. So in terms of immunity for staff, currently at the embassy, we have something like 2 or 3 MCC staff who serve in the embassy just like diplomats. And so the thing is, they're working in the embassy, but they're MCC employees. And so what we've asked the Nepali government is that just like when a diplomat, like as a diplomat, I am protected by international law, but also by the law of Nepal. that I cannot be harassed or people cannot force me to pay bribes, things like that, not only in Nepal, but in any other country. We're asking for those same diplomatic protections for the tiny number of MCC employees who have come from overseas. And so this is in no way trying to abrogate or give trouble to the country of Nepal, but simply to ensure that when we have someone coming here, they enjoy the same diplomatic protections that other foreign diplomats, whether working for the UN or others, enjoy, so that they can take care of their work with that, without fear of influence or harassment. So that's a good question of what that section means, Now, the question about whether MCC, another question that's arisen is, oh, it's part of the US's plan to reduce the army or military. I can assure you that there's absolutely no military component to the MCC of any kind. We do have cooperation between the US military and the Nepal military, which occurs military to military in form of training and knowledge sharing and partnerships, things of this kind. And we do have a military attaché who works in Nepal, but he has nothing to do with MCC. And I've got to tell you, I was an NGO guy and I didn't used to work for the government. So I always used to wonder, because you hear all these conspiracies, and I wondered, oh, what is the US government doing, And then when I started working for them, now I work inside, and there's no tricks here. The MCC is about electricity and roads. It is not about the military. And the thing about Nepal that's crucial is that, you can't build high value added businesses if batti gayo all the time, right? I mean, when the electricity goes, you can't use the internet, you can't do anything. And so having regular power supply is essential. Hydropower is something Nepal has in great abundance. During peak season, it could even sell its excess supply to a country like India. And then India, in turn, might be able to sell it to other neighboring countries if India can't use all the power. So it's in Nepal's interest to be connected to the electricity grid of its neighbors, okay? And it's also in Nepal's interest to be able to have good roads. And that's why the MCC was conceived, is that this could be a game changer to really help Nepal's economy. That's what the MCC is about. And all of the kind of side discussions that people raise are not really what it's about at all. And it's just another one of these US assistance programs that it ultimately is in our interest, because we think if Nepal develops and becomes more and more powerful and its economy grows, then it'll become a strong economic player like India. We'll be able to sell goods in Nepal, and that is in US interest. And if Nepal is strong, then we don't have to worry about other countries becoming dominant over it. And so it's in our interest for countries to be sovereign and strong and independent. So that's, I hope that helps a little bit with MCC. It's a good question. What's true in our country as well as in yours is sometimes people will talk about an issue in order to gain an advantage against a political opponent. And that's not what we intend MCC to be used for. It's just a program like all of the other USA programs that we've done that we hope can help. And I think it's a good idea personally. I've seen what the life of people without electricity is like. I've lived in a house with long power cuts in India for many years of my life. And when the power goes out, also the mosquitoes bite. So it's very troubling. And so, it's a good idea to have a program like MCC.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Since we are also receiving $200 million every year through US taxpayers' money to Nepal, and MCC has $630 million US from the both party. So the amount doesn't seem that much big, and it's a very separate program like all other programs. So which could be a very game changer idea to current aspects of Nepal, focusing on roads, electricity transmission, and that will help all the Nepali to prosper. Thank you, Mark. Thank you for the regards. The next question I would like to ask is Deepa Adhikari asking regarding the international relations. No country is true friend or foe. How do you analyze it?
I think that's true. I think countries have interests, and I think it's important for Nepal to have good relations with all of its neighbors: India, China, Sri Lanka, that is a little bit further away, not an immediate neighbor, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Afghanistan. So you can't judge other countries and say this is a bad country or this is a good country. But what you must do in international relations is make sure that your relations with other countries are not hurting your people. It's a lot like life. You know, if with your neighbors, with your friends, you want to have good relations. Now, if someone's a bully and is pushing you around, you have to stand up for yourself. And if you see a bully bullying other people, it's good to stand up for those people as well if they're too weak to defend themselves. And so those principles, I think, apply to international relations as well. But we've got to be very careful about judging other countries too harshly. You know, I look at even South Africa, for example, that used to have apartheid. They eventually, due to international pressure, gave up apartheid and became a country where there were greater rights for all people of different colors. And, you know, part of the reason that occurred is that countries put pressure on them, but also there was never a war to make them do that. There was patience, and eventually they developed into a stronger and, I think, more prosperous country because they dealt with their own issues. So I don't know if that answers the question, but I think it's a good question and it's a good way of looking at international relations.
Thank you, Mark. There's a question from Pravesh Gautam. America with about 40 crores people have over 1 million prisoners, but Nepal with over 3 crores, only 140,000 people, 14,000 people in prison. In America, 1 of 4 youth confront with law for his or illegal activities. Violence in Nepal is more stable. So what kind of violence you are indicating that we should stand up for? This is a question from Pravesh Gautam.
Okay, Pravesh, that's a great question. And you know, the truth is that America really does have some serious problems of its own internally. And we, like every country, have to deal with them. The thing that I like about our country is that people are free in our country to criticize as much as they want, and the press is really quite active. And so everyone in the world can know the truth about the problems in our country. And I think you've identified some of the serious problems in our own country. And it makes me very, very sad and upset to see in my own country challenges and problems. But that's not my current job, and my job is not, you know, my NGO does stuff in the United States, but my job is to work as a diplomat, which means I'm looking outward about how we can help others. And I think even when you have problems in your own country, you still can help others. And I think that's true of Nepal. I think that's true of every country in the world, that whatever problems we have of our own, we're still able to help others. And I think that's true even for us. You know, you may face problems in your own house between your parents, or you may make mistakes. That doesn't mean you're worthless. You absolutely can still help others. And so regardless of whatever weaknesses the United States has, I believe that we can help others. I also believe that our open political system allows for corrections to occur. So if we have too many people in prison, we can adjust our policies because it is a democracy and people can talk about it, and no one party or individual can dominate for too long. And so, but it's a good question, and I think it's a fair question, and I appreciate your asking it.
Okay, let's get to Suman Dungana's question. Confrontation between China and America may bring hostile wars for Asia, as America is threatened by its internal crisis. Threatened America internally sees crisis on rise of China, which America intends to contain offensively. In this situation, don't you think Nepal may be a cockpit of America-China containment strategy?
Okay, that's a good question. You know, when you consider like what I said is important to us, we're concerned about open travel, open trade lanes, open sea, okay, open communications, and so on. Nepal is a landlocked country and really doesn't lie on the route of a lot of trade lines. We want Nepal to have open trade with India, with China, with all of its borders. But in terms of our desire for openness, Nepal geographically is not the place where there may be a different philosophy. Now, if China starts closing sea routes in its part of the world, that's a different story. Now, they haven't done that, and we would hope they never would, just like we hope the Straits of Hormuz will never be closed, and we hope that the Gulf of Mexico is not closed. All of these trade routes, or the Panama Canal for that matter, all of these trade routes need to remain open. And so I think it's not surprising that people write about a Chinese-US rivalry simply because China has been so incredibly successful economically. China has helped many countries with its assistance, and China's expanded its influence around the world. And when you have a powerful country like China and a powerful country like the United States in the same locations, there's going to be competition. And I think we are competing with China in economically. We're also competing probably in terms of philosophy. The U.S. philosophy is different, but it's a competition that is in both countries' interests to remain peaceful. We want peace, and I think China wants peace too. So, but what we want is a free and open world order because we think that ultimately benefits people. You give people freedom, you allow them to move around, you allow them to trade, you allow them to interact with each other, you avoid getting into too much debt. We think that's good for everyone in the world. So I don't know if that helps answer the question, but I think it's a good question. Thank you.
Okay, Mark, that's a very, I would like to go for the next question. The question is from Kriti Kutal. Having worked in Nepal for so long, what do you think is the Nepali version of American dream?
Oh, I saw this question in the chat. Wow. Well, you know, I think that the Nepali version of the American dream is I want to help my family. I mean, Nepalis love their families. I mean, this is why so many Nepalis go abroad to earn, even in jobs that are not so easy, because they love their family. So many poor people from Nepal will go and work. And, you know, I saw one great film, short film, Babu, I think it was, about a guy from India, a guy from Nepal who had to go to India to work, and he left his child behind, and they were affected by the earthquake. It was very hard. It was very marmasparshi and prernadai, you know, very inspiring and heart-touching. But the Nepali dream is I love my family. I want to take care of my family. I want my family to be proud of me. And I think in many ways that's the American dream too. Although I've got to say, in our country, we have more problems in keeping strong families than in Nepal. In Nepal, your family values and relations are strong. And that's one of the great qualities of this country that I think can really make it successful. And so I love my family. And I think that's what's going to drive Nepal forward into the future, is that Nepalis care about their family, and they want their family, they want their kids to have a better life than they did. And, you know, I think that this country can be very, very successful if we give the people the chance to do what they want to do for their families.
Okay, thank you, Mark. It's a question from Bamanji, and I also like this question. How do the globally concise youth at present can contribute to make people-to-people relationship better, that may ensure better diplomatic relationship between Nepal and Indonesia?
Now, I missed the subject of that sentence. I understood about how can we increase people-to-people ties, but what was the beginning of the question?
How do the globally conscious youth at present can contribute, make the people-to-people relation better?
Okay, that's a great question. I understand. How do globally conscious youth contribute to better people-to-people ties? This is an excellent question. And you know, now that the internet has opened up, what a tremendous chance we have to become friends, not just with each other in our town or village, but literally with people all over the world. Probably the biggest thing I've learned in building relationships is that we should always say yes when we have a chance to build a new bridge, to learn from people. And that's one of the reasons I moved to India when I was 23 years old, is I wanted to help people, but I didn't want to do it like I'm some great guy. I wanted to learn from them. And the truth is, I learned more from the people of South Asia than I taught them. I would go to people's houses, they had absolutely nothing. And they would send one of their children out to the neighboring store, and they would pay 2 rupees 75 for a small Campa Cola or Mirinda, small drink. And this for them was a lot of money because they were so noble and so caring. But the thing I learned from all of this is that networking, building relationships, is how you build better people-to-people ties. And so how do you do that? We're all busy. We all have things we're supposed to do every day. I've got to go do this, go do that. But people should always be at the very top of your list. I want to have close relationships. I want to have friends. I want to stay in touch with my friends. Even today, you may have some friends that you've lost touch with recently because you've been busy. Why not send them a text or a message even after the meeting today? You know, to say, hey, I was thinking about you. And those friends, whether they're in Nepal or far away, building those relationships, that's ultimately what leads to success. It's not about how much Bautik Vigyan or Bhaugolik Vigyan or Samajik Vigyan, you know, or Arthatantra ko barema or Rajnitik Paristiti ko barema that you know. What matters is your relationships with other people. And so how do globally conscious youth promote people-to-people ties? Say yes to every opportunity. And that's what I would encourage. My wife's very involved in this. She still works in the NGO world, and she organizes volunteer trips for globally conscious young people to come to other countries and meet people and learn from each other, and also try to serve and help in development projects, because I think this is so important. And I'm very proud of what the U.S. Embassy does on this. Not only we have our diversity visa program, which helps Nepalis to come to the United States, but we've got a lot of good people-to-people tie programs, including even this one, because this is part of the embassy's program to work with your excellent organization to promote understanding, so we can talk as human beings and not just read about each other in the newspaper or online.
Okay, thank you, Mark. That was wonderful. Now I'll join two questions and ask, because this seems very similar to each other. The Nepal politics is influenced by different countries, more by India rather than USA and other. Our politicians always blame to India indirectly. What do you think it is true? If it is true, how should Nepal should make the bilateral law and relationship with other countries, India and other countries? With this, I want to join another question. To what extent does relationship of USA with other countries influence its relationship with Nepal?
Okay, these are both really good questions. So the United States wants Nepal to have a good relationship with India and a good relationship with China. And we want Nepal to be sovereign and to make up its own mind. And that means politically or in all areas. We think that economic ties are good with your neighbors. Trade, like open borders to trade goods, trade, energy ties, communication ties. Now, what Nepal has with India historically is there is a great cultural affinity. Okay, I think we all know this. I mean, we in Nepal, we know the beautiful Nepali songs, but we also know the beautiful Hindi songs. And many times the hit movie that we are watching is not necessarily something made in Nepal, but made in India. And that's not a bad thing. There are cultural affinities there. I think that what I would say to my Indian counterparts or my Nepali counterparts is treat each other with mutual respect. And when countries are neighbors and you have a big brother like India, because India is much bigger, it's like a big brother. There's always in a family, if you have the Daju, maybe the Daju and the Bhai or the Behini, there'll be some tension. Okay, in my family with 5 children, the older ones sometimes weren't always nice to the younger ones. Okay, and so we have to learn to stand up for ourselves, but we also have to learn to love each other and forgive each other. And so I think that's got to be part. India and Nepal need to get along. your neighbors, and you have every reason to trade with one another and to be good friends, and we want that. And we want you to have a good relationship as well with China. We want Nepal to have good ties with other countries. So, and then there was a question about the United States, was the second half of that question, and now my old brain has forgotten it. Could you repeat the second half of the question, which was about us?
To what extent does the relationship USA with other country influence its relationship with Nepal?
Okay, that's another great question. You know, I sit in the meetings where we talk about our relationship with Nepal every day with Ambassador Berry, who I know you spoke to you a few days ago. We're really interested in Nepal being strong. So it's not about our relationship with India or our relationship with China. What we talk about here in this country is how is Nepal doing? What can we do to help Nepal? And it's not about other countries. Now, when do we start talking about other countries? It's when something happens. Like, for example, if Russia attacks Crimea in the Ukraine, then we will talk to the Ukraine about Russia because Russia has attacked the Ukraine and taken Crimea. That is something we're very concerned about. When a country like Syria has a war and foreign fighters are coming in, then we're very concerned and we talk about other countries. So, but in a country like Nepal, the primary lens we view Nepal with is how can we have ties that benefit the United States with Nepal? And how can we help Nepal to stand on its own and be a good contributing member in the region and in the international community? And how can we help the Nepali people to be successful? So naturally, our relations with other countries are something we're aware of, but it really 99.99% of the time, what we're interested in a country is not what that country has to do with others, but just what's going on in that country itself and how can we partner together for mutual benefit.
Okay, thank you. There's a question from Kesavji. Kesav sir, the Pacific and the Indian Oceans are now bringing about a dynamic coupling as seas of freedom and of prosperity. The idea of a stable, secure, and prosperous Indo-Pacific region is crucial, even when it becomes an engine for global economic growth. Why is there still a lack of clarity about its meaning among a large number of people?
I think that's a great question. And, you know, I think that the lack of clarity is partly it takes time for ideas to come into fruition. So, you know, today I talked about the ideas behind, you know, our strategy in Asia or our strategy in the Indo-Pacific region. You know, that it should be free and it should be open. I mean, it's just it's a very simple idea, but you know, people are saddled with baggage from the past and also their own ideological lenses. And so when an idea like that comes, people either may have their own reasons to oppose it, or they may not understand it and they may genuinely not trust and think, oh gosh, you know, America's out to do this or that. You know, one of the interesting things I've seen in America, by the way, is the greatest political kind of foreign policy force in America is isolationism. Many Americans think our country should just go home and just worry about ourselves. We have enough problems at home. Why are we off in Nepal or all other places trying to do good? And that is actually what our political debate in our country is not about. Let's interfere in other places, but let's not interfere. Let's get away from all these other places and go home. But I do think it's important for us to have ties with countries around the world and try to help them. So I don't agree with isolations. That's our big political debate in the United States. And I think your question is valid. We need to do a good job at messaging about the Indo-Pacific strategy, about our strategy in Asia. Part of what can offend people is even the title. You know, when we talk about Indo-Pacific, it sounds like, oh, it's all about India. It's not about India. It's just the Indian Ocean region. That's a geographic name. And so how things are named can sometimes cause people to be upset. But that's not the intent of the people who named it. It's purely a geographic descriptor. So that's a good question. I think the Indo-Pacific idea, that the idea of a free and fair Indo-Pacific, the truth is the Asia's 3 billion plus people are the engine of the world's economic growth already. I mean, Asia is doing awesome. And the more free Asia is, and the more, no wars. We don't want wars between countries. That's very destructive in so many ways. But just a free, strong economy, that's in our interest. And not one that's controlled by any one country, that's not transparent and that uses power to force its deals on people, but actual freedom. And I think countries that are free do extremely well. And we see that all over Asia. And I think Nepal is also part of that rising tide.
Okay, thank you, Mark. We are almost towards the end. We have 7 more minutes. We will go towards concluding. Here's a question from a participant. What are the future and further plans of USA to enhance the bilateral relationship with Nepal?
Okay, that's a very good question. I think our goal is to continue on the pattern of what we've done in the past, to try and figure out what partnership programs we can do that will help Nepal build its own capacity. I think in the current era, we'd love to see the Nepal IT sector to grow and have more entrepreneurship. We think, a country like Nepal with so many smart young people could really do well in the IT sector. And so that's something that we would like to see. We'd like to see Nepal have better energy and trade connectivity with the rest of the world, which is one reason why the MCC is such an important thing to us, is that we want Nepal to be connected. And so we see hydropower as a really good opportunity for Nepal. I think personally that tourism and agriculture, are fantastic opportunities. Nepal has some very unusual products that it can make. And if it could build food processing factories, you could use the unique herbs and other things that grow in Nepal and be able to have a food processing industry that would be really, successful. I think tourism, this country may be the most beautiful place I've ever seen in the world. I've got to tell you. I mean, it's one of the reasons I wanted to come and serve here. I have sat in Namche Bazaar and looked at the mountains or Nagarkot and thought, my gosh, this is just so beautiful. And I think how beautiful this country is. Tourism, there's tremendous potential to develop it. And I'm sorry about COVID, because COVID's really hurt a lot of people everywhere in my country, but also here.
Okay, thank you. Let's go towards very closing. Now, I want to ask for your personal experience about one of the very interesting stories that you have had in Nepal or been having these days, and one of the worst experience as well. One of the best experience and one of the worst experience inside Nepal, yours.
Okay, well, maybe they're combined. So I think one of the best experiences is, I visited Nepal in 1993. We started an NGO in Nepal. And we started a school. And the school has run for about 25 years. It's in the Kathmandu area. It's not in Gandaki province, unfortunately. But, I think one of the interesting experiences we had is that people started hearing about the school. It's not very big, but it's a free school for people who are poor. And there was a family from rural Nepal where they were going to have to sell one of their children because they had no money, and they were tempted to sell their child, which is a terrible thing. But instead, the brother brought the child to Kathmandu and had the child enrolled in the school. And now this young person went to the school and is a grown person, and they're studying engineering. They speak English. They have a great future when they were originally going to have to be sold, which was very sad. I think another story is, when people are very poor they have no food, and I've seen this with my own eyes. They pick the grass off the road and they'll boil the grass and cook it for their family. And we had a very, very poor family who was eating grass like that, and they sent the kids to the school. And the kids, again, have done very well. They've graduated and they're supporting their parents. And they're just amazing young people. And what this lesson of our NGO school taught me is that, people in Nepal are very smart. You just have to give them the opportunity. Same is true with my family. I adopted 2 children from very poor parts of India, from Bihar and Tamil Nadu. And my kids who are adopted are just as smart as any other child because they've gotten a good education in our family. And so that's, I think, the most beautiful experience. I think the worst thing for me, the worst experience is when I see human tragedy. Like when I see Tibetan refugees who don't have papers and don't have rights, or if I see, you know, that poor Dalit family, you know, and 5 others who were killed, you know, a boy loved a girl just like in the Hindi movie, and they were murdered and died in a river. That to me, I didn't see it with my own eyes, but it made me very sad. I did see the possessions of the climbers who died on Everest in '96, because I was in Namche and Siangboche and Tengboche at that time. And I rode on a helicopter that had all of the personal possessions of the people who died that year on Mount Everest, that was very sad. And so I think perhaps the saddest thing for me is when I see people who are extremely poor and I can't help them all. And that makes me very upset. And I'm sure you feel that too, because we don't have enough money to help everyone we see. So thanks, that's a good question.
Thank you, Mark. We tried to address a lot of participants' question. I guess, thank you for wonderful insights. Hope this was very useful to our participants. Now I'd like to request you for any of your concluding remarks. Please feel free to share your concluding remarks.
Okay, well, you know, first of all, we can all learn from each other, and just like you don't know what your future will hold. You remember the song from Kaimatse Kaimata, Papa Kate Baranam Karega, but Beta Hamara Yisakam Karega. And then he says, but I don't know what my destiny holds. You know, whatever your destiny is, it may not be what you hope for. Like you might be sitting here today hoping, I want to be chief minister of Gandhiki province, or I want to be a parliamentarian, or I want to be a big business person. What you want may not happen. When I was a young man, I was in Washington and eventually becoming a US senator, okay, and being a politician. I worked for John McCain when he was a first-term congressman. But then along the way, I had some change of mind, and I decided I didn't want to do politics, and I wanted to just help the poor through NGO work, and I did that. And then at a certain point, I realized I cannot support my family with all this NGO work. I need to get a different career, and so I became a diplomat. And so you don't know where your life will take you, but each day you can live your life with all your heart, like it said in that song that we sang at the beginning. And making those cultural ties and those networking ties. I mean, I love Nepal. I love the language. I love the people. I've tried to learn Nepali, and I try to practice my Nepali because I think it's amazing. But I also love India, and I love Bangladesh. I love Pakistan. I love Afghanistan. I love the places I've had a chance to meet people. And what I've seen is that everybody is worthwhile and everybody can do something great. So don't let your failures define you. Don't let your mistakes define you. If someone gets angry at you and you make a mistake, say sorry, but move forward. And don't be disappointed if you don't get exactly what you want today. Just try to do good to others, and you'll find that it comes back to you. And I want to say I'm very honored and thrilled that I could be with you. I wish that we were, you know, together, that we could all be sangye, eota tauma, tara hamro paristiti yesto cha kihami COVID-19 ko mahamari ko karan le vibhin tau haruma chao rahami ek arkalai amne samne herna sakdi now. So I probably made mistakes there, but anyway, you know what I meant. So thank you so much for your time. I hope you like our mask. We made a Nepal America mask, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity. And if I didn't get to answer your question, I apologize. But thank you for listening to me and being so kind.
Okay, Dhanyavad. Now I'll request my team member Prakriti. Please, we want photographs with Mark. So maybe I will request every participants to turn on your video if you are comfortable, and our friend Prakriti will take a photograph. Prakriti, over to you for photograph, please.
Thank you, Susan T. So smile. Another one. Okay, big smile. Another one. Okay, done. Thank you.